How do you stop your mind from keeping you stuck, fat, and miserable? With our Eat Like a Goddess mentor, Sandy Zeldez, and you'll hear me refer to her as Ms. Z throughout the show. We've got a lot of really cool things that we're going to capture for all of you today. This is a show about giving you solutions, faster and, more amazing ways about nutrition, emotional release work, because that is significantly important. But this is something that is important for you to know about Sandy. She works with spiritual and health conscious professionals, entrepreneurs, artists, performers, who all of us struggle with food cravings, weight and body image, moving beyond loving food. But with some of the decisions we make about dieting and about our lives and our body image are so absolutely obsolete. And so today we're going to be talking with her about what she's learned after many, many years. I love when people show up and take on a vision and mission in life that's all about what they broke through, because this is somebody that struggled with sugar cravings and other challenges. That's why she is one of the most sought after people in this arena to look at, to go to understand how you can get the kind of help you need. As a chef to many celebrities, she's done that. Business leader over 17 years, certified nutritionist, EFT practitioner. Her expertise is in getting to the heart of the issue. That's what today's show is about. And one way to do that is to cut through the chase and say, are you feeling this way about yourself? Come on. Do you get up every day and really hang on to, I look so beautiful, when really what you really believe is you don't? So this is a show to help you make that shift, to make a move, to discover how you can do things differently in your life, why it's important to do so, and how it all starts with, as we talked about before, the quantum you. Sandy, welcome to the show. Super to have you here.
Yay. Thanks, Pat. I'm so happy to be here.
All right. So what I want to do is I want to pull a little card that I pull, and I want to see what shows up now after I did that big. I don't know about you, but I'll tell you, I have really looked at myself some days exactly like I announced the title. Let's pull a card, and then we can go from there.
Now, here's Dr. Pat's prosperity message of the day.
Woo-hoo! Yeah, baby. I know. Does that make you laugh? I was like, yeah, that's it. That's me. All right, here's the card. You ready? I think you're going to like this one. I lived, thank you, Heidi. Heidi Bayer, thank you, honey, for these prosperity cards. Yep. Linda is actually going to be scheduling her. I live in the flow and the rhythm of life. Here you go. You ready, Sandy? Experience the rhythms of life and stay aware of the prosperity cycles of ebb and flow. We are ultimately made of energy, and we attract that which resonates with our own rhythm. Trust that when the flow of life goes out, it will always come back in. When the flow of abundance goes out, it will always come back in. When the flow of positive self-image goes out, it will always come back in. You see what I'm saying with that card? What do you think?
I love that. And you know what I think about that?
Tell me.
I don't know if I'm agreeing or disagreeing, but I think the flow is always happening.
Yes.
Right? It's always there. It's just that we step out of it for a minute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're like, uh-oh, the light's on, nobody's home. But we forget the light's always on, and we're always home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I love that. Getting into balance, getting into the flow. I think that fits perfectly with what we wanted to talk about today.
Well, let's start with the title of the show, because I love that you came right out of the gate and said this. Because honestly, I have to ask you this question to kick it off, and then we're going to talk a lot about, eating, food, chemistry, all of that. But the thing I want to ask you about is, what part of your life gave you that aha moment, waking up one day and looking at yourself like that, stuck, fat, and miserable? I know you had to be there. Nobody talks about this topic without having been there.
Oh, yeah. Well, being stuck. I mean, who hasn't ever been stuck, right, with your finances, with romance, with whatever? We all get stuck, And I think, feeling into one of the stuck places for me, it was years ago when I realized, here I'd studied all this great stuff about nutrition and food, and I was, quote, doing it all right, I know what to do. do. I'm not like, it's not a lack of information or knowledge by any, stretch of the imagination. I had all the knowledge and information, but I couldn't do it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You can't get yourself to do it. You're like, I'm eating the pizza, and I'm eating the this, or I'm eating what everybody else is eating when I don't want to, or I'm seeing that cake that I think is, not really what I want to be doing, and I'm eating the whole thing, or I'm eating 3 slices, or, and it's so funny because it's hard for me to remember what that felt like now because it feels so long ago. But I want to say it was about 10 years ago when, you're at a party.
Yeah.
I always tell people about this, like, and everyone there, and they're all health-conscious people. They're all my friends, everybody eats well. But everybody just cannot wait for the sweets, right, to go out. And everybody's talking about it. I can't wait for this. Oh, what did you bring? Did you bring the da-da-da? And there's all these different cakes and goodies. And people are acting like it's a big deal. And I'm like, I was that person, too. I was like, yeah, I can't wait for the sweets to come out. Screw all the other food. I just want that. And nowadays it's like, I really don't want that. It's not even a thought. To be honest, it's not a thought. It's just, I notice the conversations around me, and I'm like, I don't know, whatever. I mean, it's just not a pull. Does that make sense, Pat?
Absolutely. This is really what we're talking about. I'm kind of the same way, right? I mean, it's like I look at the things that I was interested in before, and it was so hard. As a matter of fact, okay, so let's talk, right? Went out to dinner with, I think, about 30 of my friends the other night, and we did an event for a birthday. 3 of the people in the group have all birthdays, right, like this week. And so we go out to this great restaurant, and we're eating upstairs because the sun was out, so we're eating in the outdoor thing. And there are a lot of foods, and the dessert menu comes by, right? And, you just sat down, and you had a great, and you're watching people and what they're eating, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, my God, I would so love to have that rhubarb cake. And then you said, oh, but not really. And so the question then becomes, how did you get there? How did I get from one place to the other? And, part of this was exactly like you said. There are some things that have to come into being and come into place, aren't there, for us to make decisions like that for ourselves, Sandy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a 2-step process, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
yeah.
Tell us.
Okay, you want to know it? I'm going to tell you everything.
I want to know
actually
everything.
I have tons of tips and tools people can use that really, really will work. I can't, it's all over my website. You guys can look at that. Like people telling me all the time, oh, I just listened to the one audio and I stopped my craving. So it's not nothing when I give you these tips. They really, really work. So 2 steps. 1 step, yeah, there really is a way. There are some physiological pieces there. They're not that big a deal, and I can give you all that in just a sec.
Okay.
And I think dieters, and because our culture gets so confused and there's so much restriction mentality and so much fear around weight and food, people have a hard time implementing the simple steps, okay? That's the second step. The second step is dealing with all that. And that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where things get exciting, and that's where the real shift was for me, too. Because we know what to do, but we don't always do it. And by the way, this isn't to say that you're never going to eat cake or something again. I mean, I'm so not that person. I don't do black and white thinking. I still eat sweets. It's just that it's a choice. So I just want to say that. Making choices with food as opposed to being obsessed or out of control. That's all I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do now is, for some people, just knowing a really simple process with eating, to control blood sugar, let's say, the physiological part of cravings, is enough for them. That's cool. That's groovy. Do that.
Yes.
But then when you... yeah, go ahead.
I love this, and I love what you're saying, because you've worked with countless people, and you use a very, very specific approach with people. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. But one of the things I love about you, Ms. Z, is I love that you are the believer of possibilities.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we are dealing with a society right now And we have some of the most unusual addictions going on around food.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
beliefs. You know,
Yeah.
someone the other day, I was watching some television show, and someone the other day said something like, "Oh my God, you know, I'm not going to get rid of my microwave. How would I cook for my children?" And so
Say
that
that
was
again. You're not going to get rid of what?
Oh, she said, I'm not going to get rid of my microwave. How am I going to cook for my family? And so I want
okay.
to, right. And I'm like thinking to myself, they invented the stove. Send her a brochure.
About that?
Yeah, when we come back.
One thing I would.
Let's talk about when we come back from break, because I want to give the whole impression of this for folks. You know, it's not so much about the microwave, is it, Sandy? It's what actually are we putting in there? What is it about food that keeps us hanging on? That's a Supreme song. You know, those cravings, Sandy, those cravings, they do keep us hanging on. I could hear that Diana Ross singing that song right now. You know, it is. They keep us hanging on. Before the break, I talked about, the comment about the microwave. You know, what is it why did that person say, oh my gosh, you can't. I got to cook in the microwave. I wouldn't be able to feed my family. What do you make of that?
Right. And I think you and I maybe have some information about microwaves that makes us think, gosh, I don't want to use one. However, what I would say to someone is, hey, do what you got to do. You don't have to do it all in a day. Like the people I'm working with often are really overwhelmed. They're tired. They're stressed out. And to have to change their entire lives, it's like, oh, my God, it's too much. And so what I say is, well, then, hey, we can't make change like that. That's okay. That kind of change sometimes isn't lasting. What we want is a lifestyle that supports us. Do what you can. Mm-hmm. What can you do? That's it. And, we like to say in the nutrition world, at least those of us who are of this holistic mind, add something in, don't take something out. So add something into your life. Don't take out the microwave. You may find you do at some point. Who knows? I don't know. You may decide, hey, I just like doing certain things with the microwave. That's okay. We all get to make our own choices, I think. And more I'm all about, how do I say this? Like, instead of being judgmental about ourselves and our choices, just honoring what we got to do and then keep moving from there. I was talking with another practitioner who I adore and love, Brad Yates, last night. I interviewed him last night. And we both talk so much about love. Like, well, if we come from a place of self-nurturance and love for ourselves, that's really all we're trying to do. From that position, we tend to make choices that do feel okay for us, whatever they are. And I know love is like, how do I love myself now? And, of course, we can talk about that and how to get there. But so one step, actually, I'm saying is, so instead of judging our choices or saying we can't do something, say, how can I and what am I willing to do for myself?
Right. This is
perfect.
What
am I willing to do? Yeah.
This is really perfect because I went through this myself about 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the things I came up with, and please comment on this if I'm off base. But I came up with the idea, you know what? I can eat an apple when I'm hungry. I could do that. And, I'm somebody that grew up not liking apples. And so I decided I was going to find an apple that I liked. And I happened to find, Fuji apples. I like them. Not many people do, but I like them. And I started out by saying, I'm going to eat this apple. I'm going to eat an apple a day. I want to tell you, now it's hard for me to get through a day without eating an apple. And it's like second nature to me. But I had to work on that. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't is that what you're talking about, something like that?
Well, and I am, and so it's going back to what we talked about earlier. Like, so I came from this food background where I would say to people, hey, do this, that, and the other thing. Let's fix those physiological cravings. Yay. And people are like, cool, but then they can't do it.
That's right.
So I'm like, okay, cool. That's a problem. So here's what we do. And that's called being stuck. That's stuck. And guess what? It's normal.
All right.
So I was like, whoa, back up. We got to go back to the drawing board and help people, all of us, get unstuck. How do we do that? Well, you know that I use tools in my practice that access that part of us that's stuck. I don't want to use big fancy words. Doesn't matter what we call it. It just works. And all we do is we address how we're really feeling. That's actually what we're doing. So the real thing we might be feeling under this stuck, there's so many, could be stress, tons and tons of stress that someone's feeling, that they need the food, and that's part of the resistance to change. Could be fear, comfort zones. Believe it or not, this is really, really, really normal out there. People won't see that about themselves at first, but when we start to look at it, that's what comes up. And so, some of the stuckness is from that. Now, some of it can come from being in that yo-yo for so long, and the all the negative thoughts and beliefs about food and weight, that you keep yourself kind of on that little treadmill through those negative thoughts. So that's another component, right, that can keep you stuck. And that can keep you from wanting to eat. I see this all the time. Women especially, that's who I work with, so I can speak to that. So afraid of gaining weight that they'll just not eat.
Yeah.
The smartest women in the world, I'm talking seriously intelligent. This is not about intelligence. This is about fear. Fear of being fat. And they won't eat, Dr. Pat. And I have to tell them, hey, whoa, this is going to mess up your metabolism, something fierce. We cannot not eat, especially not long term. Your body's going to think you're starving it. And guess what it's going to do? It's going to hold on to weight. And then when they start eating, they binge. So there's been studies on this. It's proven you can create an eating disorder in someone in 2 weeks from eating that way. Just from reducing calories, I think it's 20%. No, I don't even know if it's as much as 20%, just a really small amount. You can induce an eating disorder.
Wow.
How do you like that?
That is shocking to me. How does that work?
That's our national problem.
Yeah. Okay, so what you're saying is we have a perception, don't we, Sandy, where we think, oh, my God, I didn't get this way overnight. But in the reality, we probably did.
Sometimes. So it depends on the person. I've noticed that there's different types of people. There is the person who's had a lot of childhood trauma, let's say, and this was a coping mechanism that they've used their whole lives. We've talked a little about that. That's one type of person who's dealing with this issue. Another type is someone who's maybe not had a lifelong issue with food as much, but has some kind of chronic stressors that have happened, loss, death, I don't know. Loss is the big one of anything, a job, income, whatever.
Right.
And then they start having a problem. So there can be different types of issues out there with the food, but if you use food in this way where you actually start to diet restrict, you do create binges. Traditionally speaking, it doesn't work. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, this is something we can see in ourselves. And then when we binge, then we really don't feel good about ourselves.
Then there's a secondary problem, and you're going down this cycle. And so that's why I say, it's funny, there's so much to talk about here, but yes, there's a brain chemistry to all of this. And yes, there's a physiology to cravings. There's absolutely. But we can also address that from the clearing tools, the release techniques that help you to begin to release the stress, begin to release the negative beliefs, wherever it comes from. That's where the lasting solutions come in for so many people.
Well, I want to talk about this, a little bit because, stress. Let's talk about it. I did a show not too long ago, and I talked about, my HR job, when I was in corporate America. And, this was the first introduction to employee assistant programs, right? Where you actually had an advocate that was looking after the employee. I remember sitting around a table and, all the new research on stress came out, right? Now we have a ton of it. But it first came out. I remember just, everybody on the board just looking at that and say, that's a bunch of what. Take care of your emotions. Yeah, take care of your emotions, leave them at the door. Boy, I'll tell you, hindsight would have been a different world. We have stress coming in from all over the place at this point in time. But that's not the way that we want to live our lives, is it? And, part of the conversation, Sandy, today is talking about getting unstuck, to really looking, at our lives, as you said during the break, from a place of love. And we were talking about stress and cravings before. I don't know about you. I am running into more and more people that have taken their lives back by learning, the techniques you briefly mentioned before the break, and I hope you'll mention again, about their lives and what's important. Because for many of us, being stressed all the time, we know what it does to our bodies. I've watched it, in my friends. I've watched it in myself, the repercussions of that. And then when you couple that with eating foods that are just not helping, it is a downward spiral, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So can I give people something to do right away?
Yeah, please.
And this, again, it's a two-step process. So I will get to the second step, which is, releasing stress. But the first tip I want to give is actually just real basic. And that is, I want to give you 5 things you can do, really simple, or check if you're doing. I do this myself, especially when I was learning about all this. I really would check, am I feeling crappy or did I just not eat? So here's some tips people can do just to kind of start to see if they're not doing some of these things or if they are.
Okay.
Not to judge yourself. It's just to get rid of cravings quickly if you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step, and I know this is they're all going to sound simple, but they're all essential. You cannot skip any one of these if you want to heal physiological cravings and have brain chemistry that works properly over a long, this is a long-term approach. First step is eat breakfast. Period. End of story. No discussion. I don't want to argue. There is no discussion about it.
Well, yeah, let's say it again, please. Let's say it again.
Eat
because
breakfast.
Yeah, all right, because you know what?
We're all so busy and stressed. No, I don't have time. Well, guess what? Don't talk to me about emotional stress then, because until you've eaten breakfast, I don't know if it's emotional stress or physiological. So,
all right. Now tell everybody what this means. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah. And by the way, if you find yourself not able to, don't worry. We have step 2. Okay, but for those of you who can do this, breakfast. So what does breakfast mean? Well, there's lots of studies. I don't really like rules, but if you want a rule, they say to eat breakfast within an hour of waking. So we're all different. There is not such a rule as eat breakfast at 9 a.m. The rule is whatever you're doing. So if you have to get up at 5 a.m. for work, you might want to try eating by 6:30, see how you feel. Listen to your body. Your body will tell you what you're doing right and wrong. If you're still having cravings after implementing all the steps, well, we go to step 2 and we keep going. But breakfast is also, so here's step 2. I'm going to talk about step 2.
Yeah.
What you put in your breakfast is almost more, I don't know if it's more important, but it's very important.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is protein.
Yes.
People are eating sugary breakfast.
Yes.
That's just going to make it feel worse.
Yeah, and let me ask you, let's just stop here because I just want to be a little clear. I made this comment to my dear friend, and she said, I had protein. I had an English muffin with butter and peanut butter. And I'm sorry. No, she was
they
right.
always tell me that too. Yeah, I hear that too.
She was right.
And I say, no.
No, right.
So, right. So, okay, good. So the protein step is eat enough protein with your meals, 3 meals a day. Now, what is enough protein? There is going to be a lot of variation here. I'm going to be honest. It depends. Are you diabetic? Do you have a blood sugar issue? Are you an athlete? Are you a young child? These categories of people need more protein than the rest of us. I'm not an athlete right now. There's nothing I'm doing that's just so hard. I don't have a blood sugar issue. So I eat a certain amount of protein that works for me. Listen to your body. Your body, again, will tell you how much protein you need. But it tends to go by that and your weight, your, quote, healthy weight. And you kind of want to cut that in half and then eat the number of grams that is. So in protein 3 times a day. And this is often quite high for people, so I cut that down a little bit. So
let's say it again. How many grams did you just say?
Okay, so it's half your healthy body weight.
Okay.
So in other words, if your healthy body weight is 150.
Right.
I don't know what that is in kilos, but 150 pounds.
That's good.
You would
Let's
cut
do
that
pounds.
in half.
Right.
Right. There's 75 grams of protein, which, again, is a little high for most people.
Okay, but let's drop it to 60.
That's what I usually do, is I drop it down to about 60. So I usually tell people, I'm 5'6", so about 25 grams of protein per meal works for me.
Okay.
About.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, sometimes I eat less. There's times when I eat more depending on my stress levels and my activity. It's not written in stone. But but eat enough protein. That peanut butter she had, that was like 2 grams of protein. That's a starvation diet. Your brain's going to hate that. The brain says, oh, my God, I'm starving. That's not going to do it. So people have to know what enough protein is. I would say 15 to 20 grams for most women, as long as you're not, 5'10", really, and doing some major athletic lifestyle.
Yes.
A lot of my clients are very petite. They're like 5'1", 5'2", and that just, that's way too much protein for them.
Right.
They do great at 15.
Right. Right. But, this is really important. I mean, peanut butter, 2 grams of protein, not good. Now let's talk about peanut butter that has sugar in it already. But this is the way folks think. This is not, the good news, here's the good news. When I said, I think you should eat breakfast, go to Sandy's site, you're going to get some information. Okay. That's first move. Now, here's the feedback. It's not, I had a friend say to me, oh my God, I ate breakfast for dinner. No, we're saying breakfast and eat it at a certain time of day. And we're talking about protein. And let's talk about the egg, if we could. Eggs the eggs are almost in the same category as some of the other things, as non-fat. I mean, as fat, eating fat and oil. Eggs have taken such a rap. Now everybody's changed their mind. Now we can eat eggs, Sandy.
Yeah. Well, and here's what's funny. Okay, so this is a whole other interesting thing that's happened to our culture. We've been fed so many, pun intended, we've been fed all these diets, all these ideas about food. This is a very long story, and this is a whole other topic, but I believe there's a lot of politics involved in what we've been taught. And so now everyone's confused about what's healthy, what's not. Doing the research that I have done, I feel like eating closest to an ancestral diet, which, believe it or not, included a lot of animal foods. But the animal foods that we would eat were not factory farmed. They were naturally raised. And there's a lot of politics about all this. But all I would say to someone is if you listen to your body and you really listen, is what you're doing right now working for you? Because if it's not, you might want to try something else. I used to be vegan. I would not listen to my body.
Right.
I thought my body was wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, my body's lying to me. Because I know I'm not eating those animal foods.
Yeah, I did the same thing, by the way. I gained 20 pounds.
Thank you. I've never had more acne and been more hungry in my life.
It's not for everybody, and certainly, this is something we could talk about. Nowadays, you can get organic, there's just a lot of options that I didn't have growing up, actually.
Right. Yeah, and this is for everyone to decide for themselves. The only question I have for people is, would you rather be, how important is it to be right? Do you just want to know what your body needs, or do you need to be right? Because when we try to force something on ourselves, it doesn't work. The minute I listened to my body and decided to try doing what it said, what I was feeling to do, it worked. It really did. And so, immediately. Yeah. Immediately, same day.
Yeah.
Craving's gone. So here's what people talk about controlling cravings physiologically. Eat breakfast, eat enough protein at breakfast. Eat protein 3 times a day within 5 hours to control this, the insulin release, right? Don't be eating crazy, tons of snacks. That comes into play if you have a blood sugar issue.
Right.
So there's some things you can do, simple steps you can take. Get a good night's sleep. If we don't, we're going to have cravings out of control because of this stress hormone called cortisol. So sleep is critical. That's one of the steps to physiological cravings.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to do is when we come back from break, Sandy, I'd like for you to walk us through some of the tools and things you have on your website, because you've got a ton of information. And I want folks to know that, you've provided the information and the resources for all of us. This is really part of wanting to make this change and, creating a platform that's going to make sense for you. And then we're going to take our conversation into one of the most talked about, I think, topics that we have, fat. But Sandy, before we do that, let's have a conversation about your website, what is available for people, and what are some of the upcoming events that people should know about?
Actually, it's really exciting. I have an event going on right now with some of my favorite people in the field talking about the internal shift, this step 2 I'll be talking about in a minute that you've heard me talk about before, what it takes to get into action if you do know what to do but aren't doing it. And that is at weightlossinsideout.com. That's going on now, and it's just for a week, so you'll want to get in there to get the free calls. They're available 24 hours, or you can buy the series for a really low cost. So that's weightlossinsideout.com. I've got Carol Tuttle. I've got Brad Yates, Carol Look, Jenna LaFlemme, Darshana Wheel, Janice Blackert, and myself talking about what it takes to change from the inside out, how to get rid of judgment, how to heal body image, how to heal the emotional stress, all those negative beliefs. It's powerful stuff. I'm really in love with this series. So that's available now. And so if they want to get the calls free, they really want to go there now. So
perfect.
And at my it's phenomenal. I mean, I'm really excited. So, and my website is also phenomenal, if I do say so. I have a free audio right there at eatlikeagoddess.com. You'll see it right away at the homepage of my site. That is actually a really deep dive into what we're talking about.
Perfect.
I get a lot of people emailing me saying, "Wow, that was just unbelievably helpful," and thank you. So, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I think I put together an audio that actually helps and does something that really honors and validates, where people are at, and they feel better right away. They get results right away from it. So that audio is available at eatlikeagoddess.com. You can get that anytime. And then once you're on my newsletter, I offer free classes all the time, and there's lots of stuff available to you about this exact issue. And I only email when there's, something
right
to tell you about it, So.
Right. And also what I want to say to folks is when you go to the website, do what I did and go look at some of the success stories, because I love, love, love this. And there's a number of them that are talking about just what I'm talking about today. One of them I read before the show is no cravings or constant hunger, and I've lost 10 pounds in the last 4 weeks. I mean,
without dieting.
Without dieting. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, actually you're going to see who did this, and just check it out, because this is really the kind of help that you're going to get and that we all really admire. Sandy, thank you so much. Again, folks, eatlikeagoddess.com. All right, fat. Let's talk fat.
Okay, this is cool. So there's, the 5 steps, and of course, there's a lot of detail probably to them. But the one of the steps is also, we talked about breakfast, we talked about eating enough protein, we talked about timing of meals. Don't wait more than 5 hours. So people might have 3 meals a day, but then they have 8 hours between a meal. Well, no. You're going to binge at that meal, and that's usually dinner, by the way.
Yes.
People are so busy during the day. They make it through breakfast and lunch, but oh my God, dinner's at like 10. No. That's a recipe for binging, man. Nobody can survive their own brain chemistry. Can get past their own brain chemistry. Your brain chemistry says, "Oh my God, we're starving." Don't do that. Figure it out. Anyway, lots of tips to do that. But then the next step, and this is so important and so controversial and so simple, I think. You know what it is, Pat?
No, I want you to tell me.
And I think I'm brilliant for figuring this one out. I got to tell you.
Come on.
Yeah. It's don't skip a food group, because here's what we're doing. We've been taught, there's so many diets. No fat, no carb, no, don't do it. And it's like, oh my God. Can I tell you what that does to people?
Yes.
It makes you unsatiated, and it makes you unable to sustain any lasting change. Why? Because the body has use of every food group, really. Okay? And so it's what we've done to those food groups in our culture that's so damaging. What corporations have done to our food supply. So people are addicted to junk, and then they go, oh my God, I can't eat anything. No, you just can't eat corporate processed crap. I'm very upset about these issues. Can you tell?
I'm very upset about them too, but
they're killing people.
And they almost killed me. That's what I mean. Because I didn't know what I didn't know. And now I look at this.
Absolutely. Me neither. Yeah.
Right.
And thank God, I was willing to drop my dogma for a minute and listen to really wise people who I adored talk to me over and over, people I respected, who'd taken the time to do all this research at no cost. They didn't make any money from this. They were just believing in food and nature and health. And I learned from them, and I learned, oh, my God, my body has its own wisdom. I don't have to listen to everything out there. What if I can just implement basic strategies and see what my body says? I will know what to do. And so one of those things is stop reading diet books. Stop it. Stop it. Know where that information is coming from and really look deep into where it's coming from. It's not, the roots are really interesting roots, I discovered. And so people have an agenda. And I would say this whole no carb, this whole no fat, I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
Well,
not long-lasting.
I shared a story with you during the break about a friend of mine who loves avocado. And, now is limiting herself to a quarter of an avocado. And this is a woman that could, from Hawaii, can eat an avocado at the drop of a hat. And, I'm thinking to myself, avocado is one of the foods that was recommended for me, for my joints. And I'm thinking, how did we get this messed up so much? Right?
Because of all the misinformation out there, and people are scared. Again, it comes back to the fear. And so this is where step 2, which I know we're going to get to in another call, and you can get on my website, actually. That's all about step 2 at my website, really. I don't even talk about food anymore. I talk about healing the emotions, healing from the inside out, so you can make your own choices with food that work for you, because it's all about stopping the addictive behavior so you can know what works for you from a nurturing place. And that really is possible. I use, emotional freedom techniques and lots of other tools, but there really are techniques that help you to get clear enough to see what you really need. And then you can just listen to your body, It really does work, and it's not. And so the physiological steps are don't leave out the food groups. It's just how we're implementing them and what we're eating and how,
I love it. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us here today, and also thank you for what you do. And I wanted to just ask you one last question and make sure you give out your website again. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave us with today?